Hey folks, welcome to another Passion for Sound audio review, and today a look at this tiny thing here, the Earman Eagle DAC. This is a tiny USB style DAC that will work with smartphones and computers, and it's a competitor directly to things like the AudioQuest Dragonfly Red. So my big question for this review is whether or not this can become the new reference for USB dongle style DACs in that $100 to $200 range. Let's jump in and find out. As I've already mentioned, the Eagle here sits in that $100 to $200 range. More specifically, it's $119. Compare that to the $200 Dragonfly Red, and if it comes close to performance or betters the Dragonfly Red, it's a really compelling offering when you're saving about $80 between the retail price of the two of them. On top of that, it's also a bit smaller than the Dragonfly Red, and I think it looks and feels a bit better, so I was really keen to put them side by side. I won't spoil the fun and tell you exactly what I found just yet, but do stay tuned for a full comparison between the two. Before I get to that though, let me talk about some of the specs, the design, etc. of the Eagle. First and foremost, the Eagle comes in very simple packaging with a OTG style cable for USB-C connections. As a non-Apple user, I don't know what that means for connecting up to a modern current Apple device. I do believe you still need a separate adapter for that. And that's a shame, but that's more about Apple doing what Apple does and less so a reflection on what Earman are providing with their setup. I should mention at this point, some of you may not have heard of Earman before. It's a sub-business, if you like, or a sub-brand of Aurus Audio. Now, Aurus make really high-end gear, including the Aurus Uterp over here behind me. That's coming up for review as well, so stay tuned and make sure you're subscribed if you want to see that review. But Earman have some amazing people behind them in terms of very high-end sound quality design and a long-term history of making great products. So coming back around now to what you're getting with the Earman, other than the OTG cable, you're also getting the DAC itself. And you can see here just how small it is. If I hold it up to camera and try to get it in the focus point, we'll see if I can get it to focus for you. And you'll see just how small it is. So it's a really tiny little unit. You'll see more in the Glamour video to give you a better sense of the device and where it lights up and how it lights up. But hopefully you get the sense it's tiny, it's a simple USB-A connection, and at the other end you've got a 3.5mm output. The unit itself is, I think, a metal shell with sort of a black glass, shiny finish on both sides. It looks and feels really nice. It doesn't feel quite as sturdy as something like a Dragonfly Red, but that also means it's lighter and it does definitely still feel well made. According to the Earman website and marketing information, there's all sorts of great stuff going inside, like gold-plated PCBs and all sorts of high-quality components used within the circuit of the Eagle. But for our purpose, what we really need to know about it, other than whether it sounds good, and I'll get to that, is that it's a Sabre-based USB DAC, and it's able to handle everything from your standard Redbook PCM files, your MP3s, FLACs, etc., all the way through to super high resolution PCM, such as your 384 kHz, which means also DXD at 384 kHz, and also DSD 128. So it'll handle all sorts of different formats. It's technically not meant to be MQA certified, but I've seen written around, and I've had this experience myself, when you do feed it with an MQA signal, it responds as if it is actually decoding MQA. So I don't know what's going on there. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. The main thing we need to know is it's not meant to be MQA certified, but it does handle everything else. Power output is fairly modest. It'll give you 62 milliwatts to 16 ohm through 32 ohm loads. And if you jump up to something like a 150 ohm load, you're dropping down to just 27 milliwatts. So it's not a crazy powerful device, and in that regard, the Dragonfly Red does seem to have it beaten, and I'll get to that more in a moment, as I've already said. but it's going to be plenty good enough for most normal headphones that people are using in a portable situation, particularly with IEMs, for which it is perfectly suited for, but also for normal portable style closed headphones, whether it be some of the Beyerdynamic closed headphones, maybe the Meza 99 series headphones, all those sorts of standard everyday type sort of 32 to 50 ohm headphones, it's absolutely great with. The general sound quality from the Eagle is one that I would describe as pretty neutral, very articulate, and with a good sense of air and detail in the sound. The treble may come across a little bit dry at times for some people, but I think that's where it helps to bring that sense of detail and air. As a result, the soundstage has good width and a good sense of layering and pretty reasonable depth. Of course, at $119 US, you're not going to expect this to go up against some of the higher end units in this category, such as say the Chord Mojo, the eMen Sparrow, which is the next level up from this, and even their own TR Amp, DAC and amp unit. So it's not setting the world on fire, but it's certainly extremely good in its general sound quality presentation for a $119 US DAC. But let's consider this now in comparison to its direct competitor in the Dragonfly Red. The Dragonfly Red costs $80 US more, it's been around a lot longer, it does officially do MQA, but it's also capped at, I think from memory, 192 kHz 24-bit resolution. Whereas the Eagle, as I mentioned before, can do those super high-res formats like DSD, DXD, and 384 kHz PCM. Technically, it can also do 32-bit sound, but whether or not there's any benefit going from 24 to 32, that's a whole other question and I won't get into it here. On paper, the Dragonfly Red outputs 2.1 volts maximum, whereas the Eagle outputs 2 volts. In practice, what I found though was that the sound quality would suggest to me that the Dragonfly is comfortably handling higher output power than the Eagle is. And I'll cover that off in just a second when I talk about the differences with certain headphones. As always, I listened to quite a wide range of tracks, but one track that really stood out to me when I was doing this testing was Holding On by Gregory Porter. Playing that track through both the Dragonfly and the Eagle and switching back and forth between the two, what I noticed was that the Eagle was clearly the more articulate sounding DAC. There was a better sense of space, a better sense of layering, and everything just had much more ease to the sound, but never lost any detail whatsoever. In fact, the Red came across as the slightly thicker sounding DAC and amp, but at the same time was able to get a bit shouty sometimes as well. So it's not to say the Dragonfly Red isn't great, but I think the Eagle shows that it's a better implemented version of the same type of device. Interestingly, the Eagle presents a more focused soundstage and a more focused image, but does so at the same time as producing a greater sense of space and a less intimate presentation. Often what happens when we get a really focused image is it's because everything feels more intimate, but in the case of the Eagle, everything's actually spaced out more and focused better. So it's doing a beautiful job of balancing soundstage size and image coherency and focus. One final thing that I noticed is that, and I think this is because it's not quite as thick and weighty sounding as the Red, I did find that Eagle produced better texture within the bass notes. It wasn't a huge difference, but it was enough to make it down in my notes. Some people may prefer the extra weight and solidity, you could say, of the Red, but I personally never found the Eagle to feel too thin or too lightweight. And I'm a big fan of, anyone that has watched the channel will know this, I'm a big fan of good, solid, weighty delivery of the music, and the Eagle never disappointed. And that's across multiple headphones and multiple IEMs. As I've already alluded to, these two devices handle power output differently. And to test that out, I tried a number of different headphones to see how they worked on each of these devices. Most of my testing on what I've just described for the sound quality was done with a range of IEMs. However, when I moved on to headphones such as the AudioQuest Night Owl, which are a relatively easy to drive headphone, they're not too taxing. The same could be said of the Focal Clear for another example. All of those moderate impedance, reasonable sensitivity headphones, I would say everything I've said so far remains true for the Eagle. Where things get significantly different though is if you throw something like an HD800 at it. When I used the HD800S, the Eagle sounded a little bit thin and a little bit lifeless compared to the Dragonfly Red. The Dragonfly Red managed to maintain a sense of authority and power and presence in the delivery, whereas the Eagle just got a bit wishy-washy and lightweight. So that says to me that the way the power output is being managed internally in the device is somehow affecting how it performs with those really high impedance units. And with that in mind, I wouldn't think about the Eagle if you're looking to drive anything above that 150 ohm limit. And in fact, I probably wouldn't recommend the Eagle even at that 150 ohm limit, because often those 150 ohm headphones will have spikes that go beyond 150 ohms. So I would recommend the EMN Eagle for anything from the very base level of low impedance IEMs through to something around, say, the 80 ohm mark would probably be about the point I'd start to pull back and look at different options like the Dragonfly Red for that bit of extra authority and power. To give you a bit more clarity on that, I tried a handful of headphones with the Eagle and I noted where the volume level was on my phone using USB Audio Player Pro and also what the sound quality was like. As I've already alluded to, something like the HD800S really didn't sound as good as it could. It was passable, but it could have been better, and that was listening at about 80% sound output, and I'm not a hugely loud listener. So you can imagine if you are someone that likes to listen louder, or you're listening to music with high dynamic range like some orchestral stuff, you may run out of steam before you get the most out of those headphones. Shifting to something like the HiFiMan Sundara, which is a bit more difficult to drive, the Eagle was handling those quite comfortably in the 70 to 75% range, and the sound was great. I had no complaints whatsoever. Similarly for the Focal Clear, I had those running at about the 60% range, and once again I felt like I was getting everything I wanted out of the Focal Clear given the sound quality of the Eagle. So in other words, it's not performing like it does when I plug it into the TT2 here, but it was absolutely matching what I was hearing from the IEMs. My final test was the Meze Empyreans, and once again they were playing at about 60% for a comfortable listening level, and whilst I'd probably say I didn't feel like I was getting the absolute most out of them that I expected from the Eagle, it was certainly better than something like the HD800S. I had no complaints whatsoever, and I would gladly listen to that pairing. Where I really see the Eagle excelling though after all this testing is in that IEM and smaller, lower impedance, higher sensitivity headphone line. So smaller on-ears, things like the Meze 99s, those sorts of lightweight, portable, easy to drive headphones. The AudioQuest Night Owls and Nighthawks fit into there. I expect the Beyerdynamic T5s as well. Those sorts of devices that have been designed specifically to be drivable by any device, including smartphones, are going to sing beautifully with the Eagle because it's taking what I'd call modest power delivery, but it's really high quality sound that's coming out. At this point, for my tastes, I would rate the EMN Eagle above the Dragonfly Red across the board because I don't tend to expect a portable device to drive difficult headphones. So with that caveat in mind, the EMN Eagle is going to displace for me the Dragonfly Red as my reference device at this sort of level. The Dragonfly Red's still great, I just think the Eagle's a little bit better, particularly given the $80 difference in price. If the EMN Eagle is of interest to you, I'll put a link down below where you can jump through, find out more information, and of course purchase it if you're interested. For now though, don't forget to subscribe, I've got some great content coming up. Happy listening, and I'll see you here next time on Passion for Sound.